you can follow me at Twitter via handle Maricris_SM. And my topic is going to be what's new in Rails 4. So I guess I just need a show of hands. Who among you guys are using Rails 3 already? And 4? Cool. Okay. Sige. So I'm going to cover changes from Rails 4 to the Edge 1 4.2. So maybe some of you guys are not that diligent to read over the Edge guide. So it's going to be a summarization of that. I haven't used, so I've been using 4.1. I haven't tried 4.2 yet. And honestly, while I was creating the presentation, I found out a lot of things that I'm going to use from now on. So I'm going to share that with you guys as soon as I have that trigger. Yeah, that's one. Without further ado, let's start. I will start with 4.0. What's new with 4.0? So those who have been using Rails 3, you know that when you jump into Rails 4, you're no longer going to use 1.8, and that's a major win. So 2.0 is preferred, 1.9.3 or later is required. So that's a major win because Ruby 2.0 actually introduces a lot of upgrades in terms of speed, garbage collections, more methods in terms of your basic data sets. And then they're throwing away vendor plugins. You know, if you have used Rails 2 at some point in your coding time, you know what the hell that is. It's a big hell when you've been including a lot of plugins and can't manage them, and some plugins are doing monkey patches, etc. And then some of the other modules that were actually used before are now moved to gems, that because there are some negative offshoots of some of those functions in the earlier versions of Rails. One example is active record observers, where observers were mainly used for checking out the state of an object, state of a record, probably getting in touch with the hashes and expiring them. And later on, I'm going to tell you why that's no longer needed. And active session store, who does that? I mean, you have Memcache, you have Redis, and you have other better stuff. So it's now moved to gems. You can still choose to use them, but it's not recommended anymore. And some changes to under Action Pack. The first one is strong parameters. Some of you might have heard about this. I'm not sure what the statistics say about strong parameters on Stack Overflow. I'm sure there's also a lot of hits there and questions about that. So this is kind of part of a security measure enforced in Rails 4, wherein it only allows whitelisted parameters so that hijackers couldn't tamper with your parameters. Like a user record is more often than not carrying a role parameter, so if you don't have it in your form and the hijacker can just use that. So strong parameters will help you keep those problems from springing up. And then there's also routing concerns. It's generally speaking, it allows you to refactor your routes. So it's called just concerns, so that it's more descriptive somehow. And then there's Russian dial caching. That's why we no longer need active record servers because of that. And then there's Turbulence. So strong parameters first. Let me just show you a bit what I meant about that. So for example, you're familiar with the basic CRUD actions like new and create. So you see here on the create method, create function, that we're passing this method called event params, which is a private function inside your controller, wherein you're particularly filtering out parameters under an event object with this particular parameters or fields of your object. So say I'm just allowing title, description, start date, and end date. If a hijacker, for example, tries to introduce something there like, I don't know what, some name that they want to try to inject into your database, they're not gonna succeed because of strong parameters. So always remember to use this. Sometimes you'll get a rollback in your trace log, and then you just realize that you didn't add that particular field onto your permit parameters. So that's how strong parameters work. Routing concerns, it gives you the opportunity to have cleaner routes. More often than not, developers are kind of fuzzy about how messy their active record becomes, how long their controller becomes, it quickly becomes out of hand, but nobody pays attention to their route file. And thank God we have this already. So for example, from the upper left part of your screen, we see that the different models there, like messages, forwards of those documents to dos, all of them have a sub-resource of comments. So instead of doing that, I mean, it looks clean, but you know, if you have more complicated requirements, it's gonna look messier than that. But just to give you an idea how you can refactor that, you can put that repeating block to the lower part of the screen. You will see there concern, commentable, and then do resources comments. So that basically says this part is going to be expanded into resources comments, which can be added onto your existing models there, messages, forwards, etc. So towards the right side of the screen is a hash concerns colon commentable. So it references the concern at the upper part. So it makes it easier to read and it makes it cleaner. It makes it more compartmentalized. Sorry. Okay, let's go to Russian down caching. So what this gives you is it allows you to cache fragments inside the views, and then your cache key is very very up to date. You can use the timestamp, the ID of the record concerned. You can even nest them to, let's say you have an association of a user and then another method associated to the user. You can use them both to create a very unique cache. So gone are the days wherein you have to put an observer, check whether the parent has already been changed or the association has already been changed, and then expire the cache. So with the introduction of Russian dial caching, you no longer need to do that tedious job, and you don't have to continuously expire your TMP caches. But you'll have to do that at some point because you'll have to maintain a linear disk consumption. So, but this offers you that kind of flexibility that you need, especially when you have complicated code. So this is how it works. So with this example, there's the details object which is associated to a user. So I just cut short, it's a Hamel format, and then you see that I just put the function cache, and then your object, and then you do something there. And then beneath it, nested is the details object, and then put some other information, and so on and so forth. So it's a cascading association. And then it will create something like this. So the cache formats, it looks like that, those two lines below. So it's automatically appended with the digest, and it's clean to understand, it's structured properly. But there's a requirement to doing this. You have to make sure that your child model touches the parent whenever there's a change. So that will change the updated at timestamp of your immediate parent record. Next is Turbulence. So before I begin explaining Turbulence, let me just say that I have mixed feelings about it. So I don't know if you guys really love it or something, but just to explain, Turbulence, have you ever experienced this feeling that you click on the link and then bam, page load immediately, almost no wait time. So it feels like the page is a static page. So Turbulence makes you want to feel that way, even if you're running a Rails app and there's some complicated stuff computed at the back end. What it does is it performs background Ajax. So when you click on the link, you don't see the loading bar. And then it performs something in the back end and then replaces the URL so that you feel like it's static. It loads very, very fast. But there's some caveats to Turbulence. Some may like it, some may not, and I particularly don't. So I have stumbled upon a use case wherein Turbulence was not working for me, so I had to disable it. So this is an example. I'm sorry if it's a little bit small, but I have to show the description that I have included Turbulence in the top, and then I have this table in the middle. It's using data tables. It's a JavaScript plugin. Makes you load your entire data set into this JS library, and then you can interact with it, like search the table or sort it. You don't have to implement your own custom sorting or custom search. So this is what it does. Now, this data table is also using Ajax at the back end to load all the data. Now, this is where Turbulence doesn't work well. So what happens here is that I click on the page which has this data table page, and then all of a sudden my Ajax loading for the data tables doesn't work very well with Turbulence. What happens is like there's nothing happening. You feel like it's not moving at all, it's not functioning, there is no jQuery error from the console, nothing, no error from the log. So the magic is behind Turbulence, so that's why I kind of hate it. But there are pros to using Turbulence. I think if you have, say, a Facebook style app, would benefit very much from having Turbulence. Because it will load very fast, you will have your client staying on that page longer, or you will have a better feedback on the speed of your application if you use Turbulence. But be careful also when trying to include it. Don't include it just because it's part of Rails 4. Get to know more about Turbulence before you use it. Other parts of the Rails upgrade is the introduction of the batch verb. So if you're familiar with HTTP actions, you have get, post, you have put, and then you have delete. So there's the introduction of batch. What batch means is basically just compartmentalizing what put is already doing. It's like telling your server that you're just sending partial update for this resource. And then your routes also have a match, but you need to specify. For example, you're trying to match one particular URL, say /login, and you want this /login to respond to get and to post, for example. So you have to put match and then via get and post. And then another major win is strings rendered in your views, actually not just ERP, are now automatically escaped unless you specify it by using raw or HTML string. Let's hop on to 4.1. 4.1 uses Spring Application Preloader. What this does is like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the gem Zeus. It kinds of preload your entire environment in your machine so that when you run the Rails command, like your server or your test or migrate, probably it's already there, so it doesn't have to pull everything and run everything from the start. So, but Zeus is a gem. You have to have it in your machine. But Rails 4.1 gives you Spring, wherein you can just take advantage of the same optimization without having to install a gem in your environment. So you don't have to do another extra special activity for that. And then there's secrets, the YAML. Initially, it was just used to store secret keys of your application. It's like fingerprint. It's like a unique set of alphanumeric characters to distinguish your application from any others. For former PHP devs, I think it's similar to session ID or something like that. And then later on, it evolved to handle the task of keeping environment variables. You can put there your AWS bucket, your whatever environment you have, or constants that you have. But there are also other options that you can use, like .env also does that for you. There's Figaro and Forerunner and others. I don't know what you guys are using or what you prefer, but 4.1 gives you secrets at the end. And then other changes for 4.1 are action-packed variants. The good thing here is Rails is definitely not dead. If you've seen forums to discuss and mention that Rails is dying and we don't have enough opportunities for Rails because other languages are growing, Node is growing and stuff like that. But you can see here that they're trying to add more information and features for Rails, like handling different kinds of devices for display. For example, this year they're offering a variant function wherein your request can be automatically categorized to, say, tablet or phone or whatever. So this gives you convenience methods in checking. This gives you shortcut methods instead of trying to create your own method to verify this, like creating an application controller method to check for whether this is a tablet or whether this is a phone. You now have this kind of format that you can automatically use, and it saves you much time, saves you from the clutter of complicated code. So you can find this in the Edge guide, so just look through it for now. I haven't really tried it. There's also action mailer previews. This is very useful for verifying mail layouts. I know you guys are like kind of hardcore, we just want to write our mails in plain text, separated by backslash and stuff. But there are specific requests or requirements for writing beautiful emails with their own styles and heavy graphics and stuff. So this is kind of catering to that margin of applications that do that. So this is very useful for very highly decorated emails. But on the other side, I'm still loving Letter Opener Gem because when you click it and it extends, it's just opening in your browser. However, when you want to use Action Mailer Previews, you have to implement it yourself. You have to create a separate class inheriting from Action Mailer Preview, create your own method, say welcome email, and then access it separately. So it's not very continuous flow. You don't really experience the continuity of, I signed up, this thing will send an email, and then it pops. So you have to do it yourself. You have to trigger, you have to create that class, etc. So I'm not kind of hooray on this feature, but it's good that it's already there. And then there's active record enums. This is a really good win. I have experienced creating an application. There's this record where you have this one shows status, but from my experience, we were using state, and the state that we wanted to keep was just integer, like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Describes the state of this particular record. But when you're coding, it's very difficult to keep track of what is 0, what does 1 mean, what does 2 mean. So what you do is you probably try to create a constant inside your model and then access it, right? But this provides you a better way of doing that. It gives you convenience method for the exclamation or the bang, and there's the question mark for testing its value or truth. And then you could access the field itself, like that status, and it gives you the name for that value. So it's like you're having a hash, but you're not using a hash. So instead of using constants, you're going to use enum. So this is actually one of my favorite Rails of Rails. Next one is Kim. There's the food. So the next one is module concerning. this one is almost similar to the routes concerns I mentioned before. It's mainly used to categorize the things that work similarly. So this is an example I have come up with. So let's say you have an event, but different events respond. Sure, go ahead. Different events respond to different kinds of methods or activities. For example, you have a dinner event or a buffet event. A buffet event will have many choices. You have food, you have whatever restrictions, like dietary restrictions, vegetarian, vegan, etc. There are also events concerning RSVPs, like events that need to send out mails and event invite confirmation, etc. So you can see here that within my model, I can use different concerning blocks. So this is, think of it as a class that you would write inside library and then extend it from there. So this time you don't have to do that. You can just use concerning block within your active record object. So, isn't it fun?
So parang ano siya, kung wala yung concerning to go on RSVP,
Yes.
na file din.
Mag-inherit siya, di ba? Oo, see? So, instead of having a separate file inside your app folder or inside your live folder, it's just beautiful. I'm sorry, it's just beautiful. Sige, next, bago ako mag-imo. This is the last part, promise. I'm gonna make it quick. So, there's active job. Who among you guys uses background tasks for application? Yan, diba? So, we have our own preferences, rescue, delay job, sidekick, etc. So, whatever it is that you're using, when you're on 4.2, you don't have to worry about the syntax, you don't have to write a separate live file, you don't have to hook it within your model, because they have different syntax, they have different forms. Active job is like a wrapper on top of that. So you put it in your gem, the gem rescue, sidekick, whatever. You bundle it, and then you call active job, and then you set your config, and then you're good to go. That's how awesome this is. So you can organize your jobs within your app folder. You can create and enqueue them faster. You don't have to look up the syntax of whatever framework for background jobs you have. So, and then the best part here is you don't need to pack or unpack your job parameters. Why am I saying this? You have to pass IDs, right, in your job tasks. So when you pass your IDs, you still have to go through the checking part. Is this not a 404? Is this valid ID? Was that ID actually passed properly? Is it not a nil? Stuff like that. So I'm gonna show you how. So on the left side is how you would do your job from the old part. This one is rescue. So I have the module jobs, and then I have this queue specifically called geocoding, and then I have self.perform, and then see here that I pass shop ID. So for illustration purposes, I'm showing that I still have to check whether that ID is nil, and then I have to find that particular record, and then do whatever it is that I want to do. On active job, you just create a class, inherit from active job base, and then you call it perform, and then see here that I just passed a record. It's called shop, and then it is called shop.geocode. So that's, wow, that's cleaner. I mean, look at that. 5 lines compared to 13. You can still use that format q equals something, or you can specify your q in the class. In the class.
Where can you see a list of the queues? Parang kunwari sa rescue.
I think that one will have to fall under your
Okay.
chosen framework, but Active Route wraps it for you. So it's like they studied the different grammars and format of the different background job frameworks, and then they kind of translate it to that language or to that DSL. And then, so this is how you create the job. So to answer your question, you can pass your queue when you're creating the job. So this is how you do it. And then you enqueue it. You can call perform later or perform now, and then or you can set your waiting time. So this last part is important for that. You have to specify in your config what queue framework you prefer. So if you put so it's very easy. I mean, if you wanted to jump from sidekick to rescue or rescue to delay jump, sorry, it's very easy to do that. You don't have to change your structure, your hierarchy, your file organization and stuff. So, Mark, to answer your question, you can specify a few like this. And then the good thing here is you can, since what it does is it packs and unpacks your record for you. You can put your private methods inside, or you can even put your rescue block like this, so that when your record is not found, it automatically reverts to that. You don't need to reference an application controller method, or you don't need to rely on a default Rails behavior or something. So, sobrang ganda.
Using Rails 4, but I guess you didn't have they didn't look at all the features, but you've been using
4.2?
Sidekick
Sidekick?
extensively.
Talaga? Pero you're on 4.2.
Pero kasi, for example, meron kaming internal na gem na gumagamit ng Sidekick. So ngayon, ibis na kailangan namin i-support yung Sidekick,
Yeah.
rescue.
Oo, di ba? Oo, di ba? So, grabe. Awesome talaga. Promise. Anyway, so in relation to active job, they decided to add a deliver later method to action later. So, well, it goes without saying, you can choose to deliver now or deliver later. So it doesn't depend on the sequence of your calling of command. So you could use active job. You could use active job from deliver later, and you don't have to set up anything else extra. So this is how you call it. And then I think one of the important stuff is adequate record. This is actually a set of patches done by TenderLove. Who doesn't love TenderLove? Anyway, so what this does is basically it caches simple queries. It finds a specific format, it caches the keys and the values so that it doesn't have to unpack everything else again into a SQL format before it gets executed. So it works only with find with one ID, find by name or find by field, and then the find by format which receives a hash. Sorry. So it's not yet compatible with those query statements below. The reason for that is because of the complication of the unpacking and packing of conditions and options passed to your query. This is why. So the thing is, before you get to, there's no magic when you type model not find and you pass an ID. It's just a wrapper for your SQL, wherein Rails automatically does the conversion for you from this command from Ruby format, and then it goes to a plain SQL string by concatenating your fields and your given values. So imagine doing this every time you hit find. Every time you do a where. So what TenderLove did was to add caches on top of the commands that are mostly used. So we have yet to find out whether there will be caches on the commands at the bottom for querying. Another win is Web Console. This is actually a project created from the Google Summer Code of Rails. So they have this project wherein you integrate a web console in your error page. So without further ado, I think this can be played. There. So let's say you have this error. You meet this error page. So what you can do with web console is you can interact with the lines of code that's happening. So you can watch here. There. So you can immediately debug from your error page. But that's going to be a difficult thing when you're just working on your iPad, like me. It crashed. Sorry, fresh. Okay, so natapos na tayo. There. So this is the last one. So there is already a built-in foreign key support. Now this is the same question I guess that you will be asking. Foreign key support just now. What's the difference between foreign key and references? Yeah. So there's a difference between those two. What references does is actually it just adds a, let's say you have let's say you have a model called user, and then user has details model associated to it. So when you do your migration and you use references, you say you put there that details object, references user object. What it does on your migration is just to add user ID inside the details model. But this foreign key support does something extra on it. What it does is it actually puts a foreign key command only related to MySQL and Postgres databases. So this is the difference. So you add reference like this on the top screen. So you just add a user ID on the uploads model. But the foreign key does something extra special because it calls the, there, when you call add foreign key articles author, for example, what it does is it automatically adds this constraint on your database. So instead of just putting the field there, it automatically makes the association using your database format. So it's either MySQL format or Postgres format. So it goes the extra mile. But personally, I prefer not to use foreign keys. The reason for that is it limits your flexibility. So say for example, you don't want it to automatically function as a sub-record or a child record with its parent object. You can do that, but using foreign keys, you'll automatically get database level errors instead of just application level errors. So you guys file. So this is the end of my slide. So I guess I hope you learned a lot from the slides, the new things that you can do or use with it, Rails 4 onwards. Thank you for
Any questions?
yeah, questions.
Wala?
Yeah.
Okay, kaya na.
Kung ano,
Guys,